Welcome to The Corner, La Source's digital show dedicated to the sport and entertainment industry. Every 2 weeks, we invite a professional to share their experience, background, and challenges. The sport industry moves fast, and having their insights is the best way to keep up to speed. Welcome to The Corner.
Hi, Arnaud. Glad to have you here in our Le Corner podcast. Hope you are doing well on this Monday afternoon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys.
So maybe to kick off, could you please introduce yourself and focus on your professional journey? What got you here?
Yeah, sure. So good afternoon, good morning, everyone. So my name is Arnaud, Lieutenant. I'm currently having a role which is a bit specific and a bit unique, I believe, because I'm in charge of what is called DIT at the Royal Belgian Football Association. So DIT stands for Digital Innovation and Technology. So I have actually the pleasure to have three kind of major responsibilities. One being the traditional CIO role, so keep everything up and running in the organization. But I'm also having the Chief Digital Officer role, let's say, where I'm taking care with my teams, of course, of all our digital products that we are providing to all the community, whether they are fan or football players or football member. And I'm also, let's say, overseeing all the data and analytics related topic. So you can see me as well as having the role of Chief Analytics Officer somehow. And I joined the Royal Belgian Federation Football Association, a bit more than a year ago. And before that, just maybe to already introduce myself on the professional side, I started my career as a software developer in a Brussels software company selling financial information. During 4 years, I worked in Toronto, in New York, so mostly in North America, servicing a lot of customers over there. Then I moved to consulting, and I had the pleasure to work for a leading tech company, being IBM, for 6 years. And there I was also working mostly on data-related kind of topic already at that time. So I was working in the business analytics and optimization practice, so doing mostly consulting in various industries. And then the last 10 years, I was actually working in the pharmaceutical industry. At the UCB, it's a Belgian-based company, and there I've had again the chance and the pleasure to work a lot with data and digital, because I had the pleasure to somehow co-found one of the first AI lab in Belgium at UCB. So trying to see how we could always try to leverage data, to get more business benefit. And then here we go. 1 year ago, I joined the RBFA. And I joined the executive committee to lead indeed the DIT agenda.
Sounds really interesting, both in terms of the experience you gathered in the past years, but also in terms of the wide range of services or departments that you're covering in your current role. So really interesting. Our roads nearly crossed because I left the Belgian Pro League about. In mid 2022, I think. Okay. So just before you joined,
I joined the RBFA.
The RBFA. So we didn't have the opportunity to work together, but yeah, very interesting. And you've mentioned it before, becoming the Digital Innovation and Technology Director at the Royal Belgian Football Association. You've been part of multiple kind of big corporate organizations outside of the sports industry. What kind of triggered you or motivate you to make the switch to the very specific sports industry?
So I'm going to be very honest with you. I didn't plan that switch, and it was actually a kind of surprise when I got contacted by the RBFA to take that position, because I've been doing sports all my life. I'm actually a field hockey player. I played at a quite good level during almost 30 years. So I'm a big fan of sports in general, of football, of course, as well. But actually, I never really planned to come to this industry. And to be also very honest with you, I think that when the headhunter contacted me, a year and a half ago, my first reaction was a bit of a smile. I said myself, okay, but what am I going to do in digital in the sports industry? Which was honestly a bit stupid from my side, but it's just that I didn't realize actually what we could do in that field in the sports industry. I'm curious. So obviously, when they contacted me, I said to myself, "Well, okay, let's have a discussion." Because one of the first questions they also asked me is, "Okay, you're working for a publicly listed company. Would you be okay to work for a non-profit?" So they didn't say at first that it would be for the Royal Belgian Football Association, and I said, "Yeah, of course. Let's explain me what it is about." And then they simply explained me a little bit the scope I would be in charge of, which is exactly what I explained you a few seconds ago. And for me, it was really interesting because based on my previous experience, it's difficult to get this kind of responsibilities all in one role. I mean, at UCB and in the previous companies I've been working for, these responsibilities are most of the time split between different people, making actually sometimes the collaboration between these teams a bit complicated, right? Because everybody has its own agenda and everybody wants to somehow, do things a bit on their own way. And I've been a bit suffering from that in the past, trying to really synergize, these different topics, IT versus digital / marketing versus data and analytics. That's something where you have always some kind of friction. And for me, the fact that I could somehow bring my leadership and my vision on this kind of topics, all related within one position, was for me extremely unique and extremely enthusiastic. So that's why it didn't take me actually quite long to actually accept and take the job.
Okay, really interesting, and I see how the roles are a bit different. I mean, similar but different in the end. I think as opposed to what you've done at your previous. The previous roles in the different companies, and maybe just to look at the kind of the overall kind of maturity level of football when it comes to digital and technology. How would you score the maturity level comparing to the different industries you've worked in, and now your experience from this year in sports at the RBFA?
Yeah, so I think that there's obviously different ways to answer this question because I can speak, for instance, on the digital maturity of the RBFA when I joined, which actually impressed me quite a lot, I must say. That was probably also one of the reasons why I very quickly accepted to take the challenge, because I really saw, first of all, a relatively good overall level of all the different initiatives we were doing. I also saw a lot of opportunities. So in terms of playground, me coming from a very highly regulated industry, pharma, where honestly it takes ages before you can start testing new things while it's so highly regulated. I saw here in the sport industry much more freedom. So for me, I think that was extremely positive for me. But at the same time, I also saw, and that's also maybe what triggered my decision. I also saw a lot of improvement opportunities in terms of what we were already doing. Because I think that, and that will be probably one of your next questions down the road. I think that RBFA has been accelerating on the pace of innovation extraordinarily the last 4 years. We've been launching, testing, really growing extremely fast in terms of digital capabilities overall. But this, let's say, pace of innovation has also a flip side, which is that we've been sometimes taking some shortcuts. That is sometimes also a bit now blocking us in our future growth, right? Because you can work a lot, for instance, to make it simple, you can work a lot on the front end to make things extremely appealing and to try to engage much more with your users and with your community. But at the same time, if you do not pay attention to your let's say foundations and to the backbone, this may also cause other type of problems in the future. And so when I saw that, for me, it was again, one more time, a very unique opportunity to really impact, something and improve something that was already extremely good, but where we could really take it to the next level. And so also then to come back to your question, I think that if I look at the digital maturity of football at RBFA level, I would say that it was actually quite good. I would say average good, and I was actually quite impressed by the work that was done by the teams. Then, if I look at the broader ecosystem of football, there I look at what's happening at the club level in the different leagues. Also, you know that very well. When we talk about football, what are we talking about? International level, European level, or continental level, national level. And I think that there the maturity is actually quite different, I would say, from one club to another, from one league to another. But overall, I must say that I would say that the compared to basically what I've seen in other industries, I would say that we are actually quite good in football overall. I'm not feeling that we are really lagging behind.
Well, that's good to hear this positive kind of feedback, because I think that for a lot of people that are inside of the sports business for a while, sometimes they have the perception, that it's a bit negative, that maybe we're kind of playing catch up the entire time in terms of digital maturity. So it's also good to hear from somebody that has a lot of experience from the outside to learn that there's good foundations, and that obviously what is appealing to all of us, that there's also a lot of opportunities there. And I think what you've said is very relatable in terms of the kind of the opportunities that are there, but the lack of, I guess, overall strategy and vision on the road forward. And I wanted to ask if that was exactly why you joined. I mean, why the RBFA kind of hired you, or your position, structure the strategy and think about the longer term rather than looking at all of the opportunities. And sometimes it's difficult to set the right priorities at the right time, I guess. Is that the reason why you joined?
Absolutely. I think that for me, what was really interesting is that I was not taking the job of somebody else. My position was actually not existing before I joined. And that was also for me something very interesting, because I think that at that time, our CEO at that time, I think really realized that, you couldn't be, playing in at a super high level, as a national federation, if you don't have a clear digital agenda. And the fact that there was no representative at the executive committee level to actually really drive that agenda was definitely a gap. And I think that for me, having indeed the opportunity to shape and with the teams, of course, but try to bring that vision, that leadership on this kind of topic was for me a unique opportunity as well. And I must say that I've been here for 15 months now, and I really see that. I've been really able, I believe, to already get that kind of trust from my peers, from my colleagues. And I think that they are now all totally convinced that it was really needed to bring this kind of vision, which also comes with some challenges, as you can imagine, because, of course, I'm now also becoming sometimes a little bit, the guy who says, no, we are not going to do that. We should be better doing this. So that's obviously the kind of natural type of interactions you have with your colleagues. The traditional little battle between chief marketing officers and chief information officer. We also have that, but I must say that here it's extremely constructive. We do that. We're really working extremely well with the different teams, whether it is on the competition side, on the legal side, on the marketing side, on the communication side. I think everybody understands that at the end of the day, digital is really an enabler. We're certainly not there to block, different initiatives, but we need to sometimes, take a step back before jumping into the most, let's say, easiest solution. And I think that this is a bit, maybe if I would have to say one thing about what we've been doing at RBFA the last few years, before I joined, is that we've been taking probably sometimes a bit too many shortcuts, right? Today, for instance, just to give a very concrete example, it's super easy to use, SaaS, so software as a service component. It's easy, it's quick. But for instance, sometimes we don't realize enough, that it comes also with a price. I mean, obviously, this is the business models of these companies. And so controlling your cost in this kind of setup is a bit more challenging. The same goes with, for instance, any new type of cloud architecture kind of setup. Yeah, you can go for, a serverless kind of approach. Again, it goes fast, it goes quick, but then it costs quite a lot of money, especially if you scale up extremely fast. If you have 1 cent per, transaction, it's okay if you have 10,000 users, but if you have 500,000 users every day, do the math. I mean, these kind of things, sometimes you don't realize it enough because you want to innovate, you want to bring new things on the market, but you need to keep also these kind of things under control. So So no, very interesting. And I think that when we talk about vision nowadays, I think that this is also something extremely important in today's context. Look at what's happening today with Gen AI, with the ChatGPT of the world. I mean, the business models of these companies is going to be always the same. It's going to be an API-driven kind of process. So you're going to pay for each transaction you're having with this kind of AI, and this will obviously come with a cost. So you see, I think that this kind of things, this is also where you need to bring some leadership today. Be careful, because that's also something very unique. With the RBFA, we are. If I look at, for instance, our mobile application, we are probably in the top 10 of the most used app in Belgium, or at least pure Belgian app. So it's huge. You see, it's huge. I mean, we're not talking about 10,000 users. We have 500,000 recurrent users. We have 1.2 million registered users worldwide. So that's, quite significant, if you think about it.
Yeah, of course, there's a lot of people to service as a federation, right? And
absolutely.
I really relate to what you've been saying on finding the right business model around the kind of the technology that you're incorporating within your organizations, right? And setting those priorities and having the right people to manage the technology that you're buying, right? Because there's a lot of education to be done as well.
That's actually one of my key challenge nowadays. I mean, how do I need to skill up my people? Do I have to keep people internally? But then on what type of skill sets? Do I have to externalize more, unique kind of capabilities? I mean, for companies our size, it's actually quite challenging, because we are somehow, and that's also one specificity of the Belgian FA. I used to say that we are actually a relatively small company. We are 250 employees, so medium-sized company. But we have the visibility of an international company. So you see what I mean? Expectations of our users are at the same level as what they expect from the Netflix of the world. But we are not Netflix. We're a medium-sized company with 250 employees and with the budget that goes along. So managing this is, for me, also quite unique. I've never been in this kind of situation, to be honest. But it's super cool, because you need to be creative. You need to find solutions. So, but this is,
and the fans are also pretty vocal, right? If something ends up to be not meeting their expectations, they'll let you know.
Whatever we do, we used to joke with my executive committee colleagues, but this is a bit true. One of the first day when I joined the federation, I was saying, okay, but if we do this, then people are going to complain about this and that. And then, my colleagues told me, well, don't care. Don't worry. Whatever we do, people will complain. So, but it's really
true.
It's, I mean, the Belgian, a national association is really part of everyone's life somehow, right? I mean, we all feel Belgium, when it's about the national team, everybody has its own opinion on what we should do, what should be done. And so it's normal. It's part of the game.
Yeah, and it makes it fun as well, right?
Exactly.
And maybe you've alluded to it. You mentioned 4 years ago the kind of the mindset changed and the digital strategy started to take form at the RBFA level. Is that linked to the World Cup at 2018? That served as some sort of a momentum or catalyst for implementing the digital strategy, or what was the real driver for developing that longer term digital strategy at the RBFA before you joined?
I think it's that there has been like always a kind of combination of different factors. It's clear that the top results we got at the World Cup 2018 was a clear momentum in the Belgian football history, in a sense that out of a sudden we became a very interesting team, extremely visible, and obviously this has created a lot of commercial opportunities for all the sponsors. I mean, we are a non-profit organization, so we obviously get a lot of let's say our revenue from sponsorship. And so for us, trying to see how we could indeed leverage this, these good results was obviously something we had to do, because, it wouldn't come maybe every 4 years, right? So the context was extremely, let's say, interesting. And I think that this is exactly at the moment when we started reflecting, okay, how could we then really leverage these good results? And at that time, definitely, my colleagues really saw already the opportunity to improve dramatically our digital presence somehow, because that was one of the way to also show value to our potential sponsors. These 1.2 million users that we have now. I mean, it has obviously a lot of value also for a sponsor, because we can monetize that these kind of things through bannering, through activations of users, newsletters, you name it. And I think that's really how we started reflecting. Okay, if we truly want to leverage that potential value, what should we do? And one of the things that I think became quite clear at that time, so 5 years ago, was that we had at that time absolutely no clear data strategy. So we were indeed sitting on a bunch of data, but like in any company, right? I mean, data was very siloed. Everybody was somehow sitting on its own data, not really sharing. And it's not like they didn't want to share it. It's just that they didn't see the value of maybe combining a bit more this kind of data. And one of the first thing we realized was to really then start working on a data strategy and try to break these silos, to bring back the data into one main, let's say, data lake. I'm making it simple, but I guess the audience will understand. And the idea was to really build this kind of environment where we could do much more marketing automation, first of all, trying to identify, who might be the people interested to attend the game, for instance, who might be interested by buying some merchandising, who might be also the people who might be interested simply to start playing football, right? I mean, these kind of things. And so we started from the data angle, and then we quickly realized that if we wanted to truly leverage data, we would have to actually start collecting a bit better data ourselves, because that was also a bit the challenge at that time. I mean, there was a lot of Facebook groups, Instagram, pages and these kind of things. But, to put back things in context, that was also the moment when all these leading tech giants decided to close a little bit the type of APIs you could use to actually download user-related data, right? For all good reason. I'm not challenging that. But then we started very quickly realizing that if we wanted to know a bit better our consumers and our users, we may have to then dramatically improve maybe our own digital channel and provide a new type of experience to our users, so that we could actually collect data about them and about what they do on our own channel. And that's how actually the reflection then 1 year down the road, after we started reflecting on our data strategy and putting this data lake concept in place, we quickly realized that we would have indeed to launch a new mobile application where we could then indeed offer a new type of services to all our fans, but also members. And the idea was at that time to indeed have a kind of one-stop shop where you could consume a lot of information about football in Belgium at all levels, so mostly international level, but also eventually at amateur or more regional level. It could be a platform where we also show a lot of video content that we produce, because that's also something that we do quite a lot. We try to produce good quality content for our fans so that they can, know a bit better, what we do at the federation at all level. And that was also obviously a place where all the people could get information about any game in Belgium. Again, whether it is the game of your 6-year-old kids playing football next weekend, or the next game of the Red Devils or of the Red Flames. And so the idea was to really try to build a new central point where everybody could come. And the strategy behind that was to indeed collect as much information as possible about the behavior of a user, so that we could interact with them in a more personalized way.
Yeah, great. And I mean, I know the app. Obviously, it's been launched
3 years ago.
3 years ago. Yes. And where are you now on that roadmap, specifically to the application? What is on the future roadmap for 2024?
So we've been obviously what is nice when you do this kind of initiative is that and I guess it's the same for everyone. You've launched a digital product 3 years ago, 3 years and a half ago. So now you can also start really measuring how good you have been. I mean, you have data, so you can actually do a kind of deep dive analysis. And it's a must do, right? I mean, and that was one of the first thing I've been also asking, my colleague to do, to perform a kind of assessment of where we are. And it triggered actually quite a lot of very interesting insight. Long story short, one of the things we're going to be doing is to definitely keep investing in the app because we definitely want to improve the fan experience aspect of the app. But we've also realized that there might be also a need to also build separate kind of services in different products for the pure amateur member players. So, for instance, think about service like, for instance, unsubscribing from your club. You are a football amateur player. You just want to unsubscribe for your club, or you want to subscribe, for the club. What we've seen is that it's sometimes also difficult to get in one single point all the type of users that you may have. So having the fan on one side, but also the real player. Sometimes it might also be a little bit confusing for the players, right? And for the users, sorry. What should I use to actually interact with the federation? That's one thing. So, and we've seen that definitely there is a need to have maybe a bit more clarity on what channel to do what. So that's one thing. And the second thing is also, and there I'm taking my head of, let's say, CIO / Chief Digital Officer role. The complexity of managing this kind of giant app is also becoming quite challenging for us because that's always the problem. I mean, if you try to bring so many features into one single app that has so many connections with so many different, other type of channels, you increase exponentially the complexity of your app. And so now, where we're going to do to make it very simple is we're going to try to work. So we're going to reinforce the user experience we give within the mobile app to really, give more to our users. And so, for instance, we've just launched actually 2 weeks ago a new RBFA TV zone. So if now you go to the app, you will see that you can consume, for instance, all the content we produce in a much more Netflix kind of way. So I encourage all the users to have a look at the app. So that's a good example of the things we would like to do to improve the user experience within the app. And at the same time, now we're going to start reflecting on what kind of channel do we need to serve better all the, let's say, the amateur football community, because that's also an extremely important, because before, I mean, you can also argue that or think that almost all amateur football players are also fan, right? I mean, but the need that they have is different. I mean, there's a whole debate of having a companion app versus an entertainment app, right? I mean, there's just, you do things maybe in a different way depending on the context. So that's the kind of stuff we are actually now trying to work on.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It serves a different purpose, right? It's a different user persona. It's positioning yourself on the one hand as entertainment company, providing the content, the fan engagement, building a appeal product, and then on the other hand, it's also being the servicing organization for your clients.
Exactly.
So that really makes tons of sense. And I think this kind of links to the digital platform, to the Project Phoenix that you've recently launched. I think there was some communication around it last month in regards to a tender process that has been started. Exactly. I assume that this is one of your big projects for 2024. So maybe you can tell us a little bit more about that project, because it's definitely an interesting one, I think for our listeners to learn from.
Yeah, absolutely. So that is going to be actually my project probably for the next 2 years, even maybe 3 years, because it's Phoenix is actually the code name of the project that aims at replacing what we called our football management system. So the football management system is like the SAP of the Belgian football. So it's the tool that allows us to organize football in Belgium at all levels. So from Pro League to the lowest level amateur club level. So think about, this platform is literally doing what we call member management, club management, competition management, disciplinary management, financial management, and much more, And so when you think about it, as a federation, what is our role? Our role is to organize and develop football in Belgium, right? That's the mission of the RBFA. To do that, of course, we support all the clubs, amateur clubs, but also professional, clubs, in the way they can indeed, run their own games. And in that context, we have to obviously provide to all the clubs, an IT infrastructure and an IT system that allows, all the games result to be planned, to be scheduled, to be organized. So think about, for instance, designating a referee for all the games. People don't realize, but you know how many games we're playing per weekend in Belgium in football? Take a guess.
I don't dare to take a guess. I'll let you share it.
Yeah, so it's close to 10,000 games. I mean, I think it's 9,000, something like that. So we have 9,000 games per weekend. And for all these games, we need to designate a referee. And of course, you can also think about this. You're not going to designate a referee that is living, for instance, in Arnaud, in south of Belgium, to manage a game that is being played in Antwerp, in the north of Belgium. I mean, it makes no sense. So all these kind of things needs also to be planned to optimize also the cost of traveling of the different referee. To have a game, for instance, you need to have a trainer, you need to have a coach. These people need to be educated. They need to be trained. You need to make sure that they are compliant with the certificate level. They need to be in charge of taking care of a team. And again, independently from the level, you need different type of certificates. But all these kind of things, for instance, and this is just an example now, but these kind of things are actually being managed by what we call our football management system. The same goes for all the match results, all the match calendar, all the disciplinary related issues. I mean, if somebody got a red card, then indeed he needs to go through the disciplinary process, and then some decisions will be taken that involves a few games of suspension or these kind of things. All these kind of information needs to be managed into one big platform, and that's actually what Phoenix project is all about. The current infrastructure on which we are running was clearly reaching end of life. It was a kind of homemade, developed kind of platform that grew organically over the last 15, 20 years. So I'll let you, I used to joke and to say that it's our mainframe kind of of system, right? I mean, so it's still doing the job, but it's today, unfortunately, really blocking us in terms of speed, of data accuracy, of running cost. And it's not supporting anymore, actually, our community as it should do. It's not, for instance, mobile ready. So I'll let you imagine that. But in 2023, not having the possibility to consult this kind of platform on your mobile, that's a kind of difficult. So Phoenix will indeed, will aim at replacing this. But as you can imagine, it's really the beating heart of Belgian football. So it's a kind of system that you have no second chance. I mean, the way you go live with this kind of platform, you'd better be right, because it's simple. If it doesn't work, there's no football in Belgium. As simple as that. So I'll let you imagine the kind of sensitivity this kind of project will have. And at the same time, it's not like we have 3 years or 4 years to implement it. I mean, it's realistically speaking, this is the kind of project that will take at least 2 years to be implemented, that I don't think that we have actually more time than that to put it in place. So that's why indeed we've just launched a very important tender to identify the potential partners, who will be able to help us to rebuild a bit this platform, and also to have it ready for the future. Because again, if you think about the context of today with the recent progress with Gen AI and smart automation and all these kind of things, we have, again, one more time, a huge opportunity. Who is working in the clubs, in all the clubs in Belgium? Well, it's mostly volunteers, people who are doing that for free. And they have quite a lot of administrative burden. They need to indeed fill in matches. They need to follow up on an incident report, on a bunch of stuff that actually could be maybe fully automated, right? With processes, so that we actually would remove from them a big burden, so that they have more time to spend with their members at their club level, etc. So for me, that's also where I see this project as a fantastic opportunity to show how actually AI can also bring a lot of advantages, and not taking the job of people, but in this case, what we want to do is to relieve people from a lot of tasks that actually could be automated. And of course, in a volunteering context, this is crazy, because that could really make a huge impact for the football community in Belgium. So
a huge project, and I think something that really, as you said, it's an opportunity to put yourself close to the people you're servicing, right?
absolutely.
It will be very tangible for them to see that change and the services that the federation is bringing. And I remember, I think the current infrastructure was called Kickoff, if I'm not mistaken.
Kickoff, yeah, exactly.
So I know it pretty well, and
everybody knows Kickoff. I mean, everybody who's working in a club knows Kickoff.
It's very complicated. I think it was already, to a certain extent, I mean, it was digitalized already, which
has been already improved. Yeah, absolutely,
yes,
absolutely.
That was already something. I think there's a lot of federations still working a lot on paper and pen, which is I think good that the RBFA made that step already a couple of years ago. But it definitely is a huge opportunity. And are you looking into having it developed from scratch, or are you looking to work with different vendors with off-the-shelf products? Are you looking to consolidate, or are you open to every approach for the moment?
That's obviously the $1 million question. The thing is that you have indeed different options today. You can go with a relatively off-the-shelf kind of package. You can build it from scratch, or you can go for what I call the platform approach, where you take a large CRM kind of application or ecosystem, and you customize it, and you build custom modules on top of it. So you have basically these three main approaches. And what is very unique and interesting is that you definitely have very, very interesting players on the market on these three type of approach. So that's why now in the current tender process, we are busy with the first phase, that we call a request for qualification, where we have let completely open the possibilities. So we have actually, I think today, more than 25 companies, or maybe close to 30, who've been subscribing to the tender process. So, I mean, you see the traction the project has. So that's great. We are super happy with this. And based on that, we're going to see a little bit more. Okay, what is the trend? What kind of approach seems to be, let's say, the most interesting? And based on that, we will select, companies that will be invited for the real RFP process. And all these things are supposed to take place between now and June timeframe. So the target is to actually have the partner selected for June at the latest, so that we can actually start the project during summer 2024. And why that? Because, as you can very easily imagine, our migration window will actually be extremely limited. You cannot migrate this kind of project during a season. So the only chance we have to actually change the system is always in the summer, during the interseason. So it means that's why we really need to start this project, in summer 24, so that we have, let's say, maximum 2 years to actually go live with the new platform.
Okay, cool. I can imagine that maybe after this podcast, some of our listeners might contact you to see if the tender process is still open.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. We have the subscriptions are actually closed since 31st of December 2023. So, because it's we had to put a very professional tender process in place with strict deadlines. Because one more time, we are football, so whatever we will decide, people will complain.
Yeah, so let's make the best of it, of course.
Exactly.
Makes a lot of sense. You've mentioned a lot. You spoke about the different stakeholders that you have, and from fans to clubs to other organizations at Las Soufs. And I think the division that we have as well is the role that federations and leagues can play in kind of centralizing services towards their members to really drive professionalization across their ecosystem. Is that something that you also believe that is the way forward? A approach where there's more partnerships, that there's more kind of a collaboration between the different stakeholders? How do you see this yourself?
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting question, because especially when we think about digital capabilities, I think that we are probably missing some potential strong synergies. For instance, there's a bunch of stuff that we are trying to develop at the national federation level, that could actually be very interesting for all the professional clubs, for instance. Think about, for instance, ticketing kind of approach. We're selling tickets for the games, but every professional club is also selling tickets. And today, it's a bit like every club, every FA is using its own platform or its own technology. Well, somehow we could have reflected on a way where we could have at all a kind of central platform where you can actually buy all tickets for all type of games. And I'm still convinced that could also bring, for instance, some potential synergies. You could actually centralize a bit more the information about the people buying tickets. You could actually propose, other type of event. But for all sorts of reasons, this kind of approach is, for instance, indeed difficult to put in place because everybody has its own agenda, has its own objective. But for me, if you think about it from a pure common sense perspective, I mean, that would be so easy to put in place. But then for other reasons, it might be difficult. So you see, so for me, it's always a question of to what extent can we better synergize and leverage a lot of things that we have all in common? Think also about, data of the players. Today, that's maybe something we haven't been discussing quite a lot, but performance data. I mean, data about, professional players or of, let's say, future promising, let's say, young players. Everybody is collecting a bunch of data about them, right? About, training data, health data, performance data, whatever. But today, every club, let's say at our level, at the Belgian FA level, everybody keeps a little bit the data about that player, which is logical, right? I mean, everybody has been collecting this data and they don't want to necessarily share it with others. But one more time, I mean, it's somehow a pity because, if somehow we could find a way where the player can decide about its own data, right? And can somehow better share with who he wants the data that has been collected about him. That's also the kind of stuff that we could actually dramatically improve. So you see, so both on the fan engagement side, but also on the player side, I think that there's still quite a lot of things that could be done. I'm not saying that we should do it because obviously there's a bunch of reason to say no, we shouldn't be doing this because we are all competitive, and at the end of the day, I don't want that the other club sees the type of data I've been collecting about my own players. Fair point. I'm not saying that, but I'm just thinking that nowadays we should also maybe better reflect on how could we indeed better synergize and leverage certain things that we all do together, because that would actually also allow us to make huge savings, I believe.
Yeah, we couldn't agree more. I think it's the idea of being competitors on the pitch, but partners outside of the pitch. And I think as a league and a federation, you are a enabler. You give the tools to the clubs to help them run their club as professional as possible and perform well on the pitch. And I think this is a mindset, a shift in mindset. I think that is happening for the moment. We'd like to believe that. So it's good to hear the same from you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we are definitely going in a good direction. But these kind of things are indeed a big shift, and we'll see. But I'm actually quite enthusiastic. And this is precisely one of the things that we will be trying to do with Phoenix as well, trying to empower a bit more the clubs, the players, to do certain things on their own, so that they have a bit more freedom to decide if they want to share certain things, if they want to enable certain type of services to their club members, or, we want to give a bit also more control and more power to actually all the people. To your point, we want to stay facilitator, but we are not the owner of anything. I think that this is really at least my vision from a digital standpoint. We definitely want to enable, but not owning. I mean, I think that, every user should be owning its own data, its own. Yeah, it's a mind shift as well, as you said.
Yeah, I agree. No, great. I mean, we're running a bit towards the end of the podcast, but I still have a couple of questions planned. I mean, we're now in the beginning of January, and it's all about making predictions around trends in the business. My colleagues David and JB recently also gave it a try on our website. But maybe according to you, what are the trends that you think will influence the future of sports organizations, especially regarding digital transformation, technology, and revenue generation?
Well, that could be the topic of an entire podcast. So it's a very, very broad question. I think I can speak on what I see happening, at least at the national association level. I think that on that I can say a few words. In terms of trends, I think that we've seen a few interesting stuff happening last year. First of all, for instance, and this might be maybe a surprise for some of the people listening to this podcast, but I think we've definitely seen the hype of cryptos and NFT clearly going down. At least, that's if I look at what we were already discussing a year ago, we clearly see that the business case for these kind of things, for instance, is still not definitely really confirmed. At least, there's still a few things that we can do, and there's still probably quite a lot of interesting stuff we could do. But at least for us, at least at the national level, it's still a bit unclear how we could leverage that. So, for instance, I'm still seeing the NFT, let's say, concept still being in a kind of surveillance mode. I think that people are still going to be looking at, okay, what could be done there, but not really, at least, jumping in 24. No, what I do see, I think that some of the things where I think everybody wants to improve, at least on the fan engagement side, is to definitely improve what we would call the whole journey of a fan. So when I look at that, I always see it as three moments, right? You have the pre-game, the in-game, and the post-game moment. And what we want to do is to really best, go along our users along the way. So how can we help them to find more easily a ticket, for instance, for the next game? How can they find more easily also buy additional product? Like, for instance, okay, you go and sing the Red Devils. How can you easily buy at the same time a jersey of Kevin De Bruyne or for Romelu Lukaku? Trying to unify this kind of experience so that when you attend the game, it has been a completely seamless experience. Then comes to the in-stadium experience. How can we also improve that dramatically? How can you easily enter the stadium? No need to print your ticket anymore. But then, we've all seen this. You arrive at the entrance, you try to show the barcode on your cell phone, and it's still taking ages to let you in because the resolution is still not that good. These kind of little things, I think that there we can still definitely improve. And then there will be the post game. How can we better let's say provide, how can we convince our user to come back to the stadium, and also to convince other type of audiences that might actually not been, let's say, the usual suspect to attend a football game. And so for me, you see, the idea is to really see how can we improve the overall experience, end-to-end experience. And I think that on that, today we are still, a bit disconnected. You see, there is no real nice overall experience. And I think that for us, at least at the Belgian FA level, that's definitely the kind of stuff that we would like to work on a bit better. So that's maybe the kind of trend that I hope that we'll be able to see a bit more in the future. And on the more performance side, on the sports side, I think that there, the data story is going to become more and more important. So especially if you think about how could we better use data to better scout potential, talent way earlier, these kind of things. I mean, today you can use a simple smartphone and embark some sophisticated app that can, really actually record players doing a lot of small exercise. And based on that, you can measure tons of parameters. You can see the explosivity, the acceleration of a player, and all sorts of minor stuff that have been now completely commoditized, but that offer a huge opportunity to much better and earlier scout, for instance, early talent. So I think that there on the amateur side, I think that being able to better collect data is definitely something that I'm very much looking forward to it.
Yeah, that's also an evolution we see very much, and we're speaking to a lot of clients on the performance data side. So both on players' organizations that see that obviously players are more conscious about the data that is linked to their activities themselves. They leverage it in negotiations, in their transfers, and so on. And it's really interesting. And on the other hand, you also see leagues and clubs that are looking to build revenue models around the data and the collection of the data, and trying to build the right partnerships around that. So it's definitely an area of a lot of evolution in the upcoming year.
And it's funny because that just leads me back to another reflection we had. Take an app like Strava, for instance, today. Well, Strava is a bit, measuring yourself alone. But what does that mean for a collective sport like football? I mean, we are not really seeing how we perform as a team against the other teams. And so I think that, you see, if somehow we could collect in a more, consolidated way the data from the entire team, I mean, that would also then, trigger quite a lot of potential interesting opportunities, right? So still a lot of stuff to do on the data side for sure.
Yes, making it interesting. Maybe to wrap it up, some two questions we always ask to our speakers. If you had to share one piece of advice to our listeners that are passionate about innovation and digital transformation, what would it be?
Well, I think it's again the challenge is always today and that this is really a very interesting lessons learned based on our, let's say, digital transformation journey that happened the last 3 years. Be careful of the shortcuts. Be careful of trying to go too fast with this kind of microservices kind of approach, where indeed you go full API based kind of model, where it's indeed you plug and play a bunch of small components and it does a lot of small interesting features and services for you. Be careful with this, because that is something that might actually be extremely costly in the end. So if you don't anticipate it that enough, this might be difficult. So I would say that it's always a question of indeed balancing a little bit the pros and the cons. So in today's world, be careful with this. Be careful with the full SaaS approach, microservices approach. I would say that and it's actually, I was reading a paper a few weeks ago where there was actually it's becoming a kind of new trend among CIOs and chief digital officer about this trend of going full cloud, which has been the case for the last 5-6 years. No, actually, more and more, there's some conversation about, people thinking about bringing back certain things into their own data center that might be located in the cloud. You see, of course, but where you have a bit more control on what you do for that specific reason. So I don't know if it will speak to some of your people listening to this podcast, but that's.
I am sure it will. I'm sure it will. And to conclude, if you had to recommend a book series, a movie, what would it be, and how did it inspire you? It can be related to sports or not.
Well, I was thinking about that, and I would maybe recommend two things. The first one is actually it's maybe a competitor of yourself, because it's another podcast, but that I found extremely valuable for the audience. It's in English and in French, but it's called Generation Do It Yourself. And I really encourage people, because they talk a lot about sport, but also about entrepreneurship and about all sorts of topics, and very very, very interesting podcast. And at the same time, what I would maybe recommend is maybe it's a book that I bought maybe 10 years ago, but I by coincidence read again a few weeks ago. It was in my library, and then I saw it, and then I just it was a book that really inspired me at that time, and then I read it again 2-3 weeks ago, and it's called Rework. It's about how you can work more efficiently and in a more productive way. It was written by a guy, I think the name is Jason Fried or something like that. He was the co-founder of a company called Basecamp. So it's a book about entrepreneurship, but most importantly about how can you work in a more efficient way in your day-to-day life, And I think that with all the changes we've been going through the last few years, with COVID, with remote working, with Gen AI coming to place, it's actually quite interesting to see how the recommendations of this book are actually still extremely valuable for today's context. So it's an easy book to read. It's maybe 200 pages. It goes fast, and very, very, very interesting book.
Cool. Both the book and the podcast I didn't know, so I will definitely look them up myself. and I'll give you my feedback, but I definitely recommend our listeners to have a look as well. So thanks a lot, Arnaud, for this conversation. I think there was a lot of learnings we can get from the conversation. It was good to see the kind of outside perspective, somebody coming into sports with a completely different background. I think there's a lot of things that you've said that were very relatable, and a lot of insights that will be very, very valuable for our listeners. So I really want to thank you, and all of our listeners as well for listening to this podcast. I highly recommend you or encourage you to hit the follow button on whatever channel you're listening to our podcast. And Arnaud, let's speak soon. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having me, guys. And don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn and traditional social media. So my pleasure. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to our podcast. We hope you enjoy it as much as we love creating them. If you like the episode, feel free to comment, rate, and share with people around you. You can visit our website, www.lastsource.io, to learn more about our activities. You will discover a wide range of articles and can subscribe to our newsletter to receive the latest tech and sports news in your mailbox every month. Stay tuned for new episodes.
Le corner.